The package was delivered on Tuesday morning, when the California sun had painted everything around in golden hues, including the lies. Ethan Rener stood on the driveway to the house. His work boots were still covered in yesterday's mud. He stared intently at the envelope made of thick paper, with no return address. Inside, he found 3 photographs and a short note. "Check the attic. That is where the truth hides." In the first photo, his wife, Chelsea, was kissing another man in their own garage. In the second, the same man's hands rested on her waist. The third frame captured them laughing, like conspirators sharing a secret. That man was Jude Connors, Ethan's best friend since high school. The same man who, 3 years ago, had helped them buy this house. Ethan's hands did not shake. They never shook. 12 years of military service had eradicated that habit from him. However, a coldness had settled in his chest, like ice freezing still water. "Honey," came Chelsea's voice from the kitchen window. "Is everything okay out there?" "Just work stuff," he called back, slipping the photos into his jacket pocket. His voice sounded utterly ordinary, which even surprised him. He entered the house. Chelsea stood by the marble countertop, sipping coffee from her favorite mug. On it was written, "World's Best Wife," Ethan's gift from last Christmas. She wore yoga leggings and an oversized sweater, her hair pulled into a messy bun that used to make his heart beat faster. Now, he studied her face like he was reading blueprints, searching for cracks in the foundation. "How was work in Riverside?" she asked, not looking up from her phone. "Long. Mrs. Patterson's oven finally gave out. Had to order parts." Chelsea scrolled through her social media feed, liking pictures of other people's perfect lives. "Oh, Jude sent a message. He's asking if Friday dinner is still on." The ice in Ethan's chest spread wider. "What dinner?" "The one we talked about. To celebrate his promotion at the development company." She finally looked at him, and for a moment, something flickered in her eyes. Guilt? Fear? "You remember, right? We discussed it last week." In truth, they had discussed nothing. Ethan worked 16 hours a day, trying to save up for the swimming pool she dreamed of. That pool was supposed to cost $40,000, money they didn't actually have. "Of course," he replied. "Dinner sounds great." Chelsea smiled. It was the same smile from their wedding photos, the same smile she had given him when he carried her over the threshold of this house. And now, that same smile was meant for another man in those pictures. "I need to grab some tools from the garage," Ethan said. "Okay, I'll probably head to yoga soon." Ethan walked through the kitchen past the refrigerator, covered in their shared photos. Vacations, anniversaries, silly selfies where they both looked happy, young, and in love. Each image now felt like evidence of a crime he had just uncovered. The garage smelled of motor oil and Chelsea's perfume. He stood in the exact spot where the photo had been taken, imagining his wife and best friend pressing against his workbench, planning all of this. His phone buzzed. A message from his daughter, Sarah, who was away at college. "Dad, I've been trying to call Mom, but she's not answering. Can you ask her about Thanksgiving break?" Ethan stared at the screen. Sarah was 22, the child from his first marriage to Linda. Chelsea had always been polite to her, but without warmth or maternal care. Now he wondered if that distance had been deliberate. Another message from Sarah followed. "And also, weird question, but did you know that Mom asked about your retirement account last month? She called the office where I work part-time and was asking about beneficiaries or something." The ice in his chest turned into a glacier. Ethan climbed the stairs to the attic, following the anonymous tip. It was cramped and dusty, with boxes of Christmas decorations and old pictures. But behind the water heater, wrapped in a plastic bag, he found what the note had promised: a burner phone and a flash drive. He hid the items in his pocket and went back downstairs. His brain worked just like it had during those long nights in Afghanistan, when survival depended on the ability to anticipate the enemy's moves 3 steps ahead. Only now, the enemy wasn't a faceless insurgent. The enemy slept in his bed, kissed him goodbye every morning, and asked him to sign refinancing documents that Ethan, being too trusting, had never read carefully. That evening, Chelsea cooked his favorite meal, beef stew with all the sides. She lit candles and opened a bottle of wine, creating the romantic atmosphere in which he used to feel like the happiest man on earth. "I've been thinking," she said, elegantly cutting a piece of meat. "Maybe we should discuss some changes in our lives." "What kind of changes?" "Well, the cost of maintaining the house keeps going up, And with my promotion at the marketing firm, I'm now bringing in good money. Maybe it's time for you to think about slowing down and taking better care of yourself." Ethan chewed his food slowly. "I like my job." "I know, but you're almost 40, honey. How much longer can you keep crawling through attics and basements? What happens when your back or knees give out?" She reached across the table and touched his palm. Her engagement ring sparkled in the candlelight, the same ring he had saved up 6 months for, working overtime and eating instant noodles. "I just want us to be secure," she continued. "Maybe we should consider an early withdrawal from some of your retirement savings, invest them in something more promising. Jude understands these things." There it was. Jude? What does he have to do with our finances? Directly, nothing. He just mentioned some investment opportunities, real estate development projects that could bring real profit. She squeezed his hand. "We could finally have the life we've always dreamed of." I thought we already had it. Something changed in her expression, as if the mask had slipped for a moment. "Don't be so literal, Ethan. You know what I mean." After dinner, while Chelsea took a bath, Ethan sat in his truck and plugged the flash drive into his laptop. There were audio recordings from the last 6 months. His heart pounded as he played the first file. Chelsea's voice. "He signed the papers yesterday. He barely even read them." Jude's voice. "Good. That gives us full access to the joint account." "What about the retirement fund?" "That's trickier, but I'm working on it. I told him we need to restructure for tax purposes." "And he believed you?" "Ethan isn't stupid, but he trusts me. Sometimes I think he trusts everyone too much. It's almost pathetic." Jude laughed. "Poor bastard, working his ass off while we plan his future. Don't feel sorry for him. He'll be fine. He's resourceful. And I'm not taking everything, just most of it." "What about his daughter?" "What about her?" "She's suspicious. She asked me weird questions at the barbecue last month. Sarah is a bore who never liked me. Once this is over, she won't be our problem anymore." Ethan stopped the recording and sat in the darkness of the van, listening to his own breathing. The woman he had loved for 7 years, built a life with, was talking about him as if he were a victim in a con game. He played the next recording. Chelsea's voice. "Jude, the pool installation starts next week. Once it's done, I'm filing for divorce. I'll cite emotional coldness or maybe his financial irresponsibility." Jude's voice. "Are you sure you want to wait that long?" "I need the pool finished. It increases the house's value, and I want every cent when I sell." "When you sell?" "Oh, honey, you really thought I was going to stay in this suburban nightmare forever? Once I get my half of everything, we'll buy that condo in Miami, with an ocean view." "What if he contests the divorce?" "He won't. Ethan is old-fashioned. He'll try to be noble. He'll give me whatever I ask for, just to avoid a lengthy court battle. Besides, I'm documenting his mood swings and stress levels. If I need to, I can prove his emotional instability." "You're scary. You know that?" "I'm practical. There's a difference." Ethan shut down the laptop and looked at his house, which he had thought was their sanctuary and future. Every window glowed with light, turning the building into a beacon in the darkness. Chelsea was probably in their bedroom, applying moisturizer and reading a romance novel, playing the role of the devoted wife. Tomorrow, she would kiss him goodbye and ask how his day went when he got home. She would laugh at his jokes and snuggle up to him while they watched TV. She would perform the role of a spouse, like an actress who had learned every line. The phone rang. Sarah. "Hey, Dad. I keep thinking about Mom's call to my office. Something isn't right." "What do you mean?" She was asking very specific questions about your benefits, like, what would happen if you died or became disabled? Who would get the money? It's just weird, you know? Ethan closed his eyes. "Yes, weird." "Are you guys okay? Your voice sounds strange." "Everything's fine, honey. Just tired." "Okay, but Dad, if something is going on, you'll tell me, right?" "Of course." After hanging up, Ethan sat in the truck until the last light in the house went out. Then he drove to the 24-hour diner on Route 18, where he ordered coffee and tried to figure out what to do with the rest of his life. The next morning, Chelsea was already gone when he woke up. A note on the kitchen table said she had an early client meeting. Ethan made coffee and toast, trying to act normal, even though his former life now felt like a suit that had become too small. His phone beeped, a message from Jude. "Hey buddy, can't wait for dinner tomorrow. Chelsea is planning something special. Ethan stared at the text for a long time before typing back. Can't wait. All day, he worked installing a new heating system in a huge mansion, immersed in the familiar routine of measuring, cutting, and connecting. Physical labor had always been a kind of meditation for him, a way to quiet his mind and focus on tasks that had clear solutions. But today, even work couldn't stop the flow of his thoughts. He kept replaying the recordings in his head, analyzing every conversation with Chelsea over the last 6 months, looking for the signs he had missed. There were plenty. Her sudden interest in finances, her more frequent late nights at work, new clothes and expensive makeup, and the gym membership she had insisted on, even though they were supposedly saving money. And Jude, his best friend since 17, with whom he used to drink beer behind the hardware store and dream of escaping their small hometown. Jude had escaped first, getting a partial scholarship to college. Ethan had gone straight into the military after graduation. By the time Ethan came home, his friend was already building his real estate empire. Despite their different statuses, they had reconnected as easily as if no time had passed. Jude had been the best man at Ethan's wedding, and Ethan had been an honored guest at his. Now, his old friend was sleeping with his wife and coldly planning to rob Ethan blind. That evening, Ethan drove to a quiet bar on the other side of town. There, he dialed the number on a business card he had kept in his wallet for 2 years. Monica Valdez, private investigator. They had met at Jude's birthday party, where she had accompanied one of his business partners. Back then, she had jokingly handed Ethan her card, after hearing his story about trying to find a stolen trailer full of tools. "Take this," she had laughed. "You never know when you might need a professional tracker." The phone rang 3 times before she answered. Valdez Agency. "Monica, this is Ethan Rener. We met at Jude's party." "I remember the HVAC guy with the honest face." Her voice was warm but wary. "What can I do for you?" "I need help, and I need someone I can trust." "That sounds ominous. Where are you?" "Murphy's Pub on 5th Street. "Be there in 20 minutes. Monica arrived in jeans and a leather jacket, her dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She was in her early 30s, with a sharp gaze and the kind of confidence that comes from people used to making a living off other people's troubles. She slid into the booth across from him and ordered a beer. "You look terrible, Ethan. What happened?" He laid it all out. The photos, the recordings, the bitter realization that his entire marriage had been a carefully planned lie. Monica listened without interrupting, only nodding or making notes in a small notebook. When he finished, she leaned back and studied his face. "I'm sorry. That's a special kind of betrayal. I want to know their plans, down to the smallest detail. I can handle that. But first, let me ask, what kind of ending are you looking for?" Ethan thought about it. A week ago, he would have said he just wanted to win his wife back and fix what had broken between them. Now, he felt something else. Something cold, patient, and utterly merciless. "I want them to pay," he said quietly. Monica smiled, and it was not a kind smile. Now we're speaking the same language. Over the next hour, they developed a strategy. Monica would surveil Chelsea and Jude, documenting their meetings and gathering evidence of the affair and financial schemes. Ethan would continue playing the role of the unsuspecting husband, secretly protecting his assets and preparing for a counterstrike. "The key is patience," the detective explained. "Let them think they're winning. Give them enough rope to hang themselves. And when you have everything you need, you pull the trigger." "How long will that take?" "A few weeks, maybe a month. Depends on how careless they get." She finished her beer and added, "Meanwhile, don't sign anything. Don't give them access to new accounts. And for God's sake, don't let on." "I'm not sure I can pretend for long." "You're stronger than you think." Monica stood up and tossed $20 on the table. "I'll be in touch. And listen, Ethan, things are going to get really bad before they get better. Make sure you're ready for that." Dinner with Jude was unbearable. They went to an upscale Italian restaurant downtown, where the portions were tiny and the prices were astronomical. Chelsea wore a new dress that probably cost more than Ethan made in a week, and she looked stunning in it. Jude arrived 15 minutes late, apologizing profusely and smelling of expensive cologne. He hugged Chelsea a moment too long and shook Ethan's hand with that exaggerated firmness meant to convey sincerity. "Sorry, guys. A client meeting ran long. You know how it is." They sat by the window, watching the traffic crawl through the evening dusk. Jude ordered an expensive bottle of wine and began talking about his latest construction project, luxury apartments on the waterfront. "The profit is insane," he boasted, gesturing with his glass. "We're looking at a 200% return, maybe higher." "That sounds risky," Ethan said. "All good investments involve risk. That's what separates the wealthy from the merely comfortable." Jude smirked. "Speaking of which, Chelsea, I've been thinking about what we discussed, about the possibility of investing." Ethan looked at his wife. "What investments are we talking about?" Chelsea's cheeks flushed slightly. "Jude mentioned some projects that might suit us. I was just about to talk to you about it." "I'm just saying," Jude picked up, "that you're sitting on a gold mine with your retirement savings. Why let them gather dust in low-yield accounts when you could be building real capital?" "Because that's money for our old age," Ethan said flatly. "It needs to be safe." "Safety is just another word for stagnation." Jude leaned forward. "Look, I get it. You work hard for your money, but at some point, you need to make your money work for you." Chelsea nodded enthusiastically. "That's what I've been trying to tell him." Ethan smiled and took a sip of wine. "I'll have to think about it." For the rest of the evening, he watched them. The way Jude's hand lingered on Chelsea's shoulder as he helped her with her coat. The way she laughed at his jokes, a little louder than necessary. The way they glanced at each other when they thought he wasn't looking. They were good at hiding the truth, but not perfect. Micro-expressions slipped through, barely noticeable touches, shared glances that lasted a fraction of a second too long. To anyone else, they would have looked like just friends at dinner. To Ethan, who now knew where to look, they were conspirators. After the restaurant, Jude suggested a drink at a nearby bar. Ethan declined, citing an early workday, but urged Chelsea to go. "You barely ever go out," he said, kissing her cheek. "Have fun." Driving home alone, Ethan felt something he hadn't felt since his overseas service, the calm that comes with accepting a mission. He now had a target, a plan, and a course of action. The next morning, Monica called with her first report. After the bar, they went to the Marriott downtown, she said without preamble. "Room 412, paid for with a card from one of Jude's shell companies. They were there for 3 hours. I have footage of them entering and leaving, if you need it for court." "What else?" "This morning, I followed Jude to his office. He met with a lawyer named Patterson, who specializes in asset protection. Then he had lunch with someone from City Hall. I'm still figuring out what that connection is." "From City Hall?" "Your buddy has his fingers in a lot of pies, and some of them are definitely rotten." Monica paused for a moment. "There's something else. I gained access to Chelsea's email. She's been corresponding with a divorce attorney for 3 weeks now." Ethan sat down heavily on a kitchen chair. 3 weeks. Her name is Catherine Moss. Very expensive, very aggressive, a specialist in high-asset cases. From the emails, Chelsea plans to file next month, probably right after the pool is finished. She's also been looking at real estate in Miami. Looks like she's already picked out a condo. That afternoon, Ethan went to the bank and quietly transferred half of their joint savings into a new account opened under his company's name. It wasn't theft, it was his money too, but it was a start. Then he called his lawyer, a no-nonsense man named Tom Bradley, who had handled his first divorce 15 years ago. "I need to meet," Ethan said. "It's urgent." Tom's office was in a small strip mall between a pizzeria and a dry cleaner. He was honest, competent, and had never lost a case he was sure he could win. "My God, Ethan," Tom breathed after hearing the story. "She's been planning this for months. What are my options?" "The good news is you have evidence of infidelity and financial fraud. That plays well in court, especially with a plaintiff like you, a veteran, a hard worker, a faithful husband. The bad news is, she has a head start. If she's been hiding assets or moving money, it'll take time to track everything. Time we may not have if she files first. My advice? Document every move, gather more evidence, and strike first. I want to wait." "Why?" Ethan remembered the recordings, Jude's laughter, and Chelsea calling him pathetic. "Because I want them to believe they've won, right up until the moment they realize they've lost everything." Tom raised an eyebrow. "As a lawyer, I can't advise that. I'm not asking for advice on that part." Over the next 2 weeks, Monica built an irrefutable dossier. She filmed Chelsea and Jude at 3 different hotels. She documented Jude's meetings with city officials. It turned out that several of his construction projects had been fast-tracked through the permitting system despite environmental violations. But the biggest find was the scale of their financial fraud. They're not just stealing your retirement money, Monica explained during one of their secret meetings. They're using it to buy land that Jude's company then develops using city grants. It's a shell game, but a very profitable one. What kind of money are we talking about? Your share is about $200,000, but the whole scheme runs into the millions. Ethan looked at the photos spread across Monica's table. His wife kissing another man. His best friend shaking hands with corrupt officials. Financial reports showing money moving through a labyrinth of fake companies. There's one more thing, Monica added. I think they're going to set you up. For what? Emotional instability, or maybe domestic violence. I found a log on Chelsea's phone. She's documenting your supposed outbursts of anger and aggressive behavior. It's all lies, but to a judge, it could sound convincing. She's laying the groundwork for a devastating blow. If you try to contest the divorce, she'll claim you're dangerous, get a restraining order, maybe even have you arrested. While you're dealing with criminal charges, she'll take everything. Ethan felt the icy shell in his chest crack, revealing something much darker. How soon will they act? Soon. The pool is almost done, and I intercepted an email from her lawyer. She plans to file next Friday, so we strike first. That night, Ethan sat in his garage making a list. It wasn't a to-do list. It was a target list. Chelsea and Jude were the primary targets, but there were secondaries. Natalie, Chelsea's sister, who had helped register the shell companies. Mayor Halbert, who had taken bribes to fast-track Jude's projects. The crooked lawyer who laundered money through fake real estate deals. By the time he finished, there were 12 names on the list. Monica had taught him to think like a predator. Study your prey. Learn their habits, their weaknesses, their fears. Then strike when they are most vulnerable. Ethan had once been a soldier. He remembered very well how to hunt. The next morning, Chelsea announced she was leaving town for the long weekend. She mentioned a business conference in Las Vegas, a chance to network and learn new marketing strategies. "Will you be okay here alone?" she asked, stroking his cheek with feigned concern. "I'll manage. Maybe you should use the time to rest? You've been so tense lately." Ethan nodded and kissed her goodbye, tasting the lie on her lips. An hour after she left, Monica called. "They're not in Vegas. They're at a resort in Napa Valley, registered under fake names, but I already have photos." "Good. That gives us the whole weekend to work." Saturday, Ethan spent installing covert surveillance equipment in his own house. Tiny cameras in the bedroom, the kitchen, the home office where Chelsea kept her computer. Monica had provided military-grade gear that was nearly impossible to detect. "If she's recording you, we'll record her," Monica had explained. "Fair's fair." On Sunday, Ethan drove to Jude's office building. Security was minimal. The lone guard spent most of his time watching videos online. Ethan had worked on commercial HVAC systems long enough to know how to move through buildings unnoticed. Jude's corner office was just as he expected. Expensive furniture, motivational posters, and a view of the city that probably cost more to rent than Ethan made in 6 months. He planted listening devices in the phone, the computer, and the desk drawer where Jude kept his personal files. Then he photographed every document he could find, including several papers detailing the mayor's involvement in the development fraud. By Sunday evening, Ethan had enough evidence to destroy them both, but he didn't pull the trigger. He wanted them to make the first move. He wanted them to file for divorce and try to steal his money and ruin his reputation, because the harder they hit him, the harder he would hit back. Chelsea returned from the conference Monday evening, full of stories about seminars and networking events that had never existed. She looked relaxed and happy, glowing with the satisfaction of a job well done. "I learned so much," she said over dinner. "It really opened my eyes to new possibilities." "Like what?" "Oh, different marketing approaches, new ways of building client relationships." She smiled. "I think it will lead to exciting opportunities." Ethan nodded and asked about her presentations, the hotel, the other attendees. She answered each question smoothly, weaving an elaborate fiction that would have been impressive if it weren't so sinister. After dinner, she suggested a midnight swim in the new pool. They had only used it twice since it was finished, and Chelsea insisted they enjoy it more often. "Such a beautiful night," she said, putting on a bikini that highlighted every curve of her body. "And we paid so much for this. We need to use it." They swam in the dark, the underwater lights casting blue shadows on their skin. Chelsea was playful and affectionate, wrapping her arms around his neck and kissing him as if they were newlyweds. "I love you," she whispered in his ear. "I love our life together." Ethan pulled her close and said he loved her too. And for a moment, he almost believed it. This was the woman he had fallen in love with 7 years ago. This was the Chelsea who had made him believe in happy endings. But then he remembered the recordings, the photos, the carefully planned conspiracy to ruin him. This wasn't love. This was a performance. 2 days later, Monica called with the news Ethan had been expecting. She filed this morning divorce papers, citing irreconcilable differences and emotional estrangement. She wants the house, half your retirement savings, and spousal support. What about the restraining order? Not yet, but her lawyer filed a motion claiming you've been acting erratically. They're building the case slowly. How much time do I have? You'll be served tomorrow, probably right at work. Then things get interesting. Ethan was replacing an oven in an office building downtown when the courier found him. The young man looked guilty as he handed over the documents. "Sorry, Mr. Rener, just doing my job." Ethan read the papers in his truck, studying the carefully worded accusations. According to her version of events, he had become extremely unstable over the past year. Outbursts of anger, financial irresponsibility, emotional withdrawal. She painted herself as a concerned wife trying to save a crumbling marriage. It was all lies, but believable lies, the kind that might resonate with a judge who knew neither of them personally. That evening, Ethan came home to find Chelsea waiting in the kitchen with a bottle of wine and a sad smile. "I guess you got the papers," she said quietly. Ethan set them on the counter without looking at her. "Yes. I'm sorry it came to this. I really am." Her voice was perfectly calibrated, hurt but hopeful, disappointed but without bitterness. "I kept thinking we could work things out, but what? You've been so distant lately, always angry. I feel like I'm walking on eggshells around you." Ethan poured himself a glass of wine and sat across from her. "I'm not angry." "You're angry right now. I can see it in your eyes." "You just handed me divorce papers, Chelsea. What did you expect?" "I expected you to talk to me, to fight for us." Tears welled up in her eyes. "But you're just sitting there like you don't care." It was a masterful performance. If Ethan hadn't known the truth, he might have believed her. He might have fallen to his knees and begged for a second chance. Instead, he reached across the table and took her hand. "You're right," he said quietly. "I haven't been the husband you deserved. I was so focused on work, on providing for us, that I forgot about everything else." Chelsea's tears stopped flowing. She looked confused, like an actress who had forgotten her lines. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that maybe this is for the best. Maybe we both deserve a fresh start." You're not going to contest the divorce?" Ethan squeezed her hand. "What would be the point? If you're not happy, if I can't make you happy, then dragging this out in court will only hurt us both." Chelsea stared at him for a long time. She had been prepared for anger, for denial, for desperate pleas. She had not been prepared for acceptance. "I want you to keep the house," Ethan continued, "and the pool. You put so much work into making this place beautiful. It should be yours." That's very generous. "I just want you to be happy, Chelsea. That's all I've ever wanted." Now his wife looked genuinely confused. This wasn't in the script she had rehearsed with her lawyer. "What about your retirement savings, the property division?" "We'll figure it out. I trust you. I trust you to be fair." Chelsea nodded slowly, but Ethan could see the wheels turning in her head. She was trying to figure out what game he was playing, what trap he was setting. There was no trap, not yet. Ethan was simply giving her exactly what she wanted, exactly what she had planned to take by force. He was, if anything, making it easier for her, which would make what came next so much harder for her to understand. Over the next week, Ethan played the role of the defeated husband perfectly. He moved into a motel on the other side of town, taking only his clothes and tools. He agreed to every demand from Chelsea's lawyer, signing papers without reading them, accepting property division terms that bordered on robbery. His own lawyer, Tom Bradley, was baffled. "She's bleeding you dry, Ethan. Why aren't you fighting?" "Because I'm tired, Tom. I just want this to be over. This isn't like you." "You're one of the most stubborn guys I know," Monica said. Ethan just shrugged, saying maybe he was changing. Meanwhile, Monica continued surveillance. Chelsea and Jude grew careless, drunk on their apparent victory. They were seen together at expensive restaurants, buying furniture, even viewing luxury condos in Miami. They think they've won, Monica reported. Jude is already talking about liquidating your retirement fund to invest in his next project. How soon will that happen? A few days? A week? Once the divorce is final, they'll move fast. Then it's time. Ethan spent a week preparing for battle. He transferred his business assets to a dummy corporation, moved his tools and equipment to a secure warehouse, and documented every piece of evidence Monica had gathered. But more importantly, he prepared himself internally for what he was about to do. The Ethan who had trusted blindly, believed in human decency, and turned the other cheek was gone. In his place stood someone harder, someone who understood that mercy was a luxury he could no longer afford. The first shot was fired on Thursday morning. Ethan walked into the FBI's Financial Crimes Office and laid out the entire case against Jude and Mayor Halbert. The evidence was irrefutable. Recorded conversations, financial documents, photos of cash exchanges. Agent Patricia Wong listened without emotion, occasionally asking clarifying questions or requesting additional paperwork. "This is serious," she said finally. "How long have you been collecting this?" "A few weeks. And you're certain of its accuracy?" Ethan confirmed he was. Agent Wong nodded. They would need to verify everything, but if the information was correct, he had handed them a major corruption case, federal charges, RICO violations. These people were looking at decades in prison. The second shot came an hour later. Ethan drove to the local newspaper's office and met with investigative journalist David Kim. Kim had been looking into city corruption for months, but hadn't been able to connect all the dots. Ethan did it for him. "My God," Kim murmured, scrolling through the financial files on his laptop. "This is Watergate-level stuff. The mayor has been taking bribes for years. Can you publish it?" "Are you kidding? This is the story of my career." Kim looked up from the screen. "But you realize this will destroy not just the mayor and your friend. A lot of powerful people are involved in these deals." "That's the idea." The third shot was the most personal. Ethan drove to Jude's office building and took the elevator to the 15th floor. The receptionist announced his arrival, and a moment later, Ethan was sitting across from his former best friend. "Ethan!" Jude stood up with a wide smile, arms outstretched for a hug. "How are you holding up, buddy? I heard about the divorce. I'm really sorry." Ethan did not stand. "Are you?" Jude's smile flickered. "Of course. You two seem so happy." "Seemed. Look, I know this is hard. Divorce is never easy, but maybe it's for the best. You know, sometimes people just drift apart." Ethan studied Jude's face, the face he had known since they were teenagers, the face of the man who had stood beside him at his wedding, with whom he had shared 1,000,000 conversations and 1,000 beers. "I brought you something," Ethan said, pulling out his phone. He pressed play on the first recording. Chelsea's voice filled the office. "He signed the papers yesterday. He barely even read them." Jude's voice. "Good, that gives us full access to the joint account." Jude's face went pale as he heard his own words. He reached for the phone, but Ethan pulled it back. "There's a lot more," Ethan said calmly. "Hours of recordings. You both really should have been more careful about where you talked." Jude sank into his chair, opening and closing his mouth like a fish washed ashore. "Ethan, I can explain." "Don't bother. It's all pretty clear." Ethan stood up. "The FBI has copies of everything. So does the newspaper. By tomorrow morning, this whole town will know what you've been doing." "You can't do this. We're friends. We've been friends since we were 17. Ethan's voice was ice. "I also remember being the best man at your wedding. I remember helping you move into your first apartment. I remember lending you money when your business was failing." Jude's hands began to shake. "Look, what happened with Chelsea and me, it just happened. We didn't plan it. You didn't plan to fall in love, but you definitely planned to steal my money." Ethan leaned forward. $200,000, Jude. That was my retirement, my future. And you were going to take it to buy yourself a condo in Miami. We were going to pay you back. With what? The profits from your next scam?" Ethan shook his head. "You know what the funniest thing is? I could have forgiven the affair. People fall out of love. It happens. But the money, the lies, the way you both laughed about how pathetic I am." Jude tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. "The FBI will be here this afternoon with a warrant. Ethan continued. They'll seize your computers, your files, your bank statements. They'll find every bribe, every deal, every broken law. Ethan, please. And when they're done with you, when you're sitting in a federal prison thinking about how you traded 30 years of friendship for a woman who will probably testify against you to save her own skin, I want you to remember something. Ethan walked to the door, then turned back. I want you to remember that I gave you every chance to be honest with me, every chance to be the friend I thought you were. You chose to be my enemy instead. He left Jude in the office, staring at the phone that held the evidence of his own destruction. By evening, the news was everywhere. The city newspaper's headline read, "Mayor and developer charged in massive corruption scheme." Kim's article laid out the entire conspiracy in devastating detail, naming names and providing documents. Ethan watched the coverage from his hotel room, eating Chinese food and drinking beer. His phone had been blowing up all day. Reporters wanted comments. Friends expressed shock. His daughter called to make sure he was okay. He had turned it off a few hours ago. Tonight, he just wanted to watch the world he had known come crashing down. Chelsea called the motel directly at 10 o'clock. The front desk put her through after she identified herself as his wife. Ethan, thank God. I've been trying to reach you all day. I saw the news. This is insane. Jude was arrested. The FBI came to my office. They say he was stealing money, taking bribes. Can you imagine? There was a long pause. When Chelsea spoke again, her voice had changed, become cautious. They asked me about our divorce, about the finances. They seemed to think I was involved somehow. Were you? Of course not. How can you even ask that? Just curious. Another pause. Ethan, I need to see you. We need to talk about this. There's nothing to talk about. Yes, there is. The police think Jude used our divorce to hide money. They think I was helping him. You have to tell them that's not true. Ethan smiled. It was not a kind smile. Do I? Ethan. Did you know, Chelsea, that marital infidelity affects property division in a divorce, especially when combined with financial fraud? The silence on the other end of the line lasted almost a minute. I don't know what you're talking about, Chelsea finally said. The Marriott downtown, room 412, the resort in Napa Valley, your romantic getaway while I was at home installing surveillance equipment in our house. Surveillance equipment? Cameras, microphones, GPS trackers. It's amazing what you can buy online these days. Ethan took a sip of beer. It's amazing what people say when they think no one is listening. Chelsea's breathing became ragged. You spied on me. I protected myself. Turns out it was the right call. Ethan, please, whatever you think you know. I know everything, Chelsea. I know about the shell companies, the hidden assets, the plan to claim I was mentally unstable. I know about the Miami condo and the fake business conference in Las Vegas. You're scaring me. Good. You should be scared, because tomorrow morning I'm filing new papers with the court. Adultery, fraud, conspiracy. By the time I'm done, you'll be lucky to keep the clothes on your back. You bastard. You pathetic, miserable bastard. There it was, the real Chelsea. The mask had finally slipped. There's the woman I married, Ethan said. For a minute there, I almost missed her. You think you're so smart. You think you've won, but you have no idea what you're dealing with. Enlighten me. Jude has friends, powerful friends, people who won't appreciate what you've done, people who might decide that you're a problem that needs to be eliminated. Is that a threat? It's a warning, from someone who used to care about you. Ethan laughed. It was a sound without humor or warmth. You never cared about me, Chelsea. I was just a ticket to a comfortable life. A steady paycheck with benefits and a pension. That's not true. It's absolutely true. And you know what? I'm okay with that, because it means I don't have to feel guilty about what happens next. He hung up before she could respond. The next morning brought more news. Jude was denied bail after prosecutors proved he was a flight risk. 2 more city officials were arrested. The FBI froze assets belonging to a dozen shell companies, and Chelsea was served with new divorce papers, accusing her of adultery, financial fraud, and conspiracy to commit theft. Ethan met with Tom Bradley at 9 a.m. to discuss strategy. This is beautiful work, Tom said, flipping through the evidence files. I've never seen such an airtight case. She'll be destroyed in court. What about criminal charges? That's up to the prosecutor, but I'd say it's likely. The FBI is very interested in her role in the money laundering. Good. Tom looked up from the papers. You know, I've been practicing law for 25 years. I've seen a lot of ugly divorces, a lot of angry spouses, but I've never seen anyone plan a revenge so methodically. Is that a problem? Legally? No. Everything you've done is perfectly legal. I'm just wondering if you're okay with who you've become. Ethan thought about it. The man he had been 3 weeks ago would have been horrified by what he had done. That man believed in forgiveness, in second chances, in the fundamental goodness of people. But that man had also been a fool. I'm fine with it, Ethan said. The legal war between Ethan and Chelsea lasted 6 weeks. She hired the most expensive lawyer in town, but against the evidence Monica had gathered, there was no defense. Audio recordings, video surveillance, financial documents, all painted a picture of a woman who had systematically betrayed her husband, plotting to steal his life savings. Chelsea played dirty. She accused Ethan of domestic problems, emotional abuse, and mental instability. She claimed he had threatened her, stalked her, and invaded her privacy. None of it worked. Ethan had been too careful, too methodical. Every conversation was recorded, every action documented. When Chelsea's lawyer tried to argue that she was the victim of an aggressive husband, Ethan's team provided the recordings. There she was, laughing about her husband's gullibility and discussing the plan to bankrupt him. The final hearing took place on a gray November morning on a Tuesday. Chelsea sat at the defendant's table, looking nothing like the woman who had kissed Jude in their garage 6 weeks earlier. She had lost weight, her hair was unkempt, and her designer outfits had been replaced by a modest black dress that had seen better days. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, read the terms of the settlement. Chelsea would receive nothing from the marriage except her personal belongings. The house would be sold, and all proceeds would go to Ethan. She was ordered to pay him spousal support for 2 years and to cover all court costs. Furthermore, the judge announced that the case was being referred to the district attorney's office for possible criminal prosecution. The evidence presented indicated fraud and conspiracy. Chelsea's lawyer asked for an appeal, but was denied. The evidence was too strong, the deception too obvious. Leaving the courthouse, Chelsea caught up with Ethan in the parking lot. Her voice was lifeless as she accused him of destroying her life. Rener replied that he had only returned the favor. The woman claimed she had once loved him, but Ethan countered that she had only loved the lifestyle he provided. He admitted that he had loved an image that had never truly existed. Chelsea walked away across the wet asphalt and disappeared into the foggy morning. They never saw each other again. 3 months later, Ethan was settling into his new, modest apartment when Monica called. She reported that Jude had made a deal with prosecutors and received 7 years in federal prison, with the possibility of early release after 5. Chelsea was broke and had taken a job at a department store in Sacramento. Mayor Halbert was sentenced to 15 years, and his accomplice to 10. The minor players in the scheme cooperated with prosecutors to avoid prison. Justice had been served, but Ethan felt only emptiness. He wondered if things could have been resolved differently, but understood that betrayers would have continued to lie and steal. At 40 years old, he had become a different man, harder, more calculating. He realized that the world was full of predators, and the only way to survive was to become a better hunter than the rest. Soon, his phone rang from an unknown number. Detective Janet Mills of the Sacramento Police Department had tracked Ethan down through private investigator Monica Valdez. She told him about Robert Kane, whose wife had disappeared 3 weeks earlier with her business partner and $500,000 from their joint accounts. The detective suggested that Rener could help understand the mechanisms of financial fraud and psychological manipulation. Ethan agreed to meet with Kane. That same evening, he packed his things and drove. Robert Kane was waiting for him at a truck stop. He was a large man in his mid-50s with calloused hands. He looked lost and desperate. The story was painfully familiar. An unfaithful wife, a treacherous partner, and a carefully planned theft of everything they owned, including his daughter's college fund. The fugitives had even taken the van and the boat. Ethan saw a hidden strength in Robert's eyes and asked what he wanted. Kane replied that he wanted his money back and to make the guilty pay, even if it meant changing beyond recognition. Over the next month, Ethan taught Robert everything he had learned: how to gather evidence, track transactions, and think like a predator. He explained that the key to success was patience. You had to let your enemies relax and believe they were winning, so you could strike when they least expected it. Retribution came on a Thursday morning. Kane's wife and her lover had spent 3 weeks living in luxury in Cabo San Lucas, believing themselves untouchable. Mexican authorities arrested them at the airport as they tried to fly to Spain. Their accounts were frozen, and all stolen assets were documented. Robert got his money back, plus interest and penalties. His ex-wife received 5 years in prison, and her partner received 7. For Kane, it was true justice. 6 months later, Ethan's phone rang again. Another betrayed husband, another stolen fortune, another chance to teach someone how to fight back. Word about Rener spread quietly through divorce lawyers and private investigators. People came to him when the official system was powerless, and the police called it a civil matter. Ethan didn't advertise his services or ask for payment. He simply showed up, taught the person, and disappeared. Some considered him a vigilante, others a criminal, but Rener didn't care. He knew, to stop a beast, you have to become a more dangerous beast yourself. 2 years after the divorce, Ethan was in Phoenix, watching David Porter. This 42-year-old contractor had just discovered that his wife was robbing their joint business and planning to run off with her trainer. Monica sent a message about a new case in Denver, where a consultant had embezzled $2 million from a family trust. Ethan forwarded the details to Robert Kane, who had become his trusted associate. Now there was a whole network of men who had survived betrayal and emerged stronger. They called themselves the Brotherhood of the Burned. They had no headquarters or formal structure. They simply helped each other hunt. Ethan got out of the car and walked toward Porter's house. Seeing the devastated man through the window, he knocked softly on the door. When David opened it, Rener smiled with the smile of a man who knows how to make his enemies pay for what they have done.